The bridge of the Eclipse, humanity's last surviving dreadnought, was eerily silent as Captain Adrian Volkov stood before the main viewport. Outside, the cold void of space shimmered with the light of 1,000 alien warships forming an impenetrable wall. Their bioluminescent hulls pulsed like predators ready to pounce, surrounding the isolated human vessel. Humanity had been pushed to the brink. Decades of diplomacy with the Zenith Coalition had failed, every attempt at coexistence crushed beneath their ruthless expansion. Earth was gone, scorched into oblivion by an orbital bombardment so thorough that even its oceans had boiled away. Billions dead. The remnants of humanity scattered among the stars, fleeing into the darkness with no home to return to. The Zenith commander's final message still lingered in Adrienne's mind, a chilling ultimatum: submit and be called, or resist and be extinguished. She clenched her fists as her crew waited for her command. The tension on the bridge was palpable, the weight of extinction pressing on every soul present. And yet, Adrienne's voice was steady as she spoke, her words calm but edged with iron. "Open the channel," she said. The communications officer nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he activated the link. The alien commander's visage appeared on the hollow screen, tall, insectoid, and exuding an air of disdainful superiority. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke in broken standard, mocking in tone. "Humans, always clinging to hope. Do you think this relic," it gestured toward the Eclipse, "can save you? This is your final chance to surrender. There will be no mercy." Adrienne didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, her eyes like steel. "Since you chose war," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade, "let us show you how it's done." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Zenith commander staring at a blank screen. The crew of the Eclipse braced themselves as Adrienne turned to her officers. "Activate the Archangel Protocol." A collective gasp rippled through the bridge. The Archangel Protocol was humanity's final weapon, a desperate gambit conceived in the darkest hours of the war. It was said to be a thing of legends, a program so devastating that it had only been whispered about in secret military circles. Most believed it was never completed, but it was real, and it was on board the Eclipse. As the crew scrambled to execute her command, Adrienne's gaze remained fixed on the alien fleet. They had underestimated humanity, she thought. They always had. The Zenith believed themselves superior, their numbers and technology insurmountable. But they didn't understand what desperation bred in the human heart. They didn't understand what a cornered species was capable of. Within moments, the ship began to hum with energy. The Eclipse's systems glowed faintly as the Archangel Protocol awakened, tapping into reserves of power no ship should have possessed. The lights dimmed, and the hull of the dreadnought began to shift, panels retracting to reveal massive arrays of energy conduits. "Captain," the weapons officer reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "The system is online." Adrienne nodded. "Fire." The Eclipse unleashed its fury. From its core erupted a beam of energy unlike anything the universe had seen, a cascading wave of light and heat, bending and twisting through the void as though alive. It didn't just destroy, it unmade. Ships disintegrated in an instant, their molecular bonds unraveling as the beam tore through the Zenith fleet. The soundless void of space became a symphony of destruction as explosions lit up the darkness like 1,000 dying stars. The Zenith ships retaliated, firing everything they had at the eclipse. But the dreadnought's defenses were relentless, absorbing or deflecting every shot. The Archangel Protocol wasn't just a weapon, it was a shield, a living system that adapted to every threat, every attack, feeding on the very energy of the enemy's assaults to grow stronger. Minutes felt like hours as the crew of the Eclipse watched the tide of battle turn. Where once there had been an armada, now there was only debris, a graveyard of shattered alien vessels drifting aimlessly in the void. Adrian stood unshaken, her expression unreadable as the last Zenith ship attempted to flee. She gave the order, and a pinpoint strike from the Eclipse ended the warship in a silent flash of light. The battle was over. The bridge erupted in cheers and tears, the crew overcome with a mix of relief and disbelief. Humanity had struck a blow so decisive that it would echo across the stars for generations. But Adrian remained stoic, her mind already on what came next. She turned to her communications officer. "Broadcast a message to all surviving human ships and outposts." The officer nodded, his hands steady now as he opened the channel. Adrian took a deep breath, then spoke. "This is Captain Adrian Volkov of the Eclipse. To all of humanity, we are not finished. The Zenith sought to erase us, but they failed. Today we remind the galaxy who we are. We do not kneel. We do not break. And we do not forget." She paused, her voice steady but carrying the weight of 1,000 losses. "The Eclipse is your shield. It is your sword. And we will continue to fight, not just to survive, but to thrive. The stars are ours. And we're taking them back." The transmission ended, but her words lingered in the hearts of her crew. Humanity had suffered, yes, but it was still standing. And now it was fighting back. The Eclipse floated silently among the wreckage of what had once been the pride of the Zenith Armada. Twisted hulks of alien ships drifted aimlessly, their bioluminescent cores flickering and fading like dying embers. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Captain Adrian Volkov stood at the center of the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. Her face was unreadable, a mask of calm amidst the chaos. The crew had erupted into cheers when the last Zenith ship fell, but now an uneasy quiet had settled over them. They knew the cost of victory. They knew what they had unleashed. "Status report," Adrian said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Archangel Protocol is stable," the weapons officer replied, though there was a tremor in his voice. No signs of overheating or core degradation. But he hesitated. "But what?" The officer swallowed hard. "The system is drawing more power than anticipated. Learning. Adapting. If we activate it again without recalibration, it might consume the ship itself." Adrian nodded, her expression unchanged. "Noted. Ensure all diagnostics are run immediately. We'll need it again soon." She turned back to the viewport, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. The Zenith were a vast empire, and this fleet was only one of many. They would regroup, retaliate. Humanity's victory here was just the opening salvo in a much larger war. The communications officer's voice broke her train of thought. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission." "It's not human." Adrienne's eyes narrowed. "Put it through." The holoscreen flickered to life, revealing the face of a new alien species. This one was avian, with sharp, piercing eyes and feathers that shimmered like polished metal. Its voice was calm, but there was a gravity to its tone that demanded attention. Humans, it said, its standard far more fluent than the Zenith commanders had been. We have watched your struggle from the shadows. We have seen your defiance, your resilience. And now we have seen your wrath. Adrian didn't respond immediately. She studied the alien, her mind racing. This wasn't the Zenith. This was something else entirely. Another player in a galaxy full of factions vying for dominance. "Who are you?" she asked finally. The alien tilted its head, a gesture that might have been amusement or respect. "We are the Vrithari, observers of the great game. We do not involve ourselves in the petty squabbles of empires. But you are different?" Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "You are a species on the edge of annihilation, yet you refuse to fall. You wield weapons that even the oldest civilizations fear to unleash. And now you have turned the tide against the Zenith, a feat no species has accomplished in centuries." The Vrithari leaned closer, its gaze unwavering. "You have the potential to become something greater. But be warned, the galaxy is watching. The path you choose now will determine whether humanity rises as a beacon of hope or a harbinger of destruction." The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Adrian stared at the blank screen, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities. The Vrithari's words were a warning, but they were also an acknowledgement, a recognition that humanity was no longer a passive player in the galaxy's games. "Captain," her first officer said hesitantly, "what do we do now?" Adrian turned to face her crew, her expression firm. "We rebuild. We regroup. And we prepare." She gestured to the wreckage outside the viewport. "The Zenith made one mistake. They underestimated us. They thought we were weak, broken. Now they know the truth. And so does the rest of the galaxy." She stepped closer to the viewport, her voice steady but filled with quiet determination. "We are not just survivors. We are warriors, innovators, builders. Humanity doesn't just endure, we evolve. And if the galaxy wants to challenge us, they'll learn what it means to face the storm." The crew straightened, their fear replaced by resolve. Adrienne's words ignited something within them, a fire that had been smoldering since Earth fell. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for a future. As the Eclipse began its journey to rendezvous with the scattered remnants of the human fleet, Adrian issued one final order. "Broadcast a message to the galaxy," she said. "Let every empire, every faction, every observer know what humanity stands for." The communications officer nodded, his hands moving swiftly across the console. Adrienne's voice echoed through the ship as the message was recorded. "To all who hear this, humanity is not finished. You thought you could break us. You thought you could erase us. But you were wrong. We are still here. And if you dare to challenge us again, know this: we will not fall. We will not bow. And we will show you how war is truly waged." The message was sent, racing across the stars like a beacon. And as the eclipse disappeared into the void, the galaxy braced itself for what was to come. Humanity had risen from the ashes, and its roar would be heard in every corner of the cosmos. As the eclipse vanished into the expanse of space, the message continued to ripple across the galaxy. Every empire, every syndicate, every forgotten civilization tucked away in the corners of the cosmos received the transmission, its sharp tone cutting through the usual chatter of galactic politics and commerce. It was not a plea for aid or a warning to steer clear. It was a declaration of war, delivered with a precision that only humanity could muster after centuries of being underestimated. Far from the battlefield, in the shadowed chambers of the Zenith High Council, the remnants of the fleet's command reviewed the footage of the destruction. The recordings showed their once dominant armada evaporating under the Eclipse's devastating attack. The Council's leader, the Grand Hierarch, sat motionless, their obsidian carapace gleaming under the dim lights. Their multifaceted eyes reflected the destruction as if replaying it endlessly within their mind. They used a weapon beyond our calculations, one of the advisors said, their voice quivering. This cannot be allowed to stand. Humanity must be. Silence, the Grand Hierarch snapped, their voice cutting through the chamber like a razor. Humanity has already proven that we underestimated their resolve and their capability. What we face now is not a fractured, fleeing species. What we face is vengeance. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the projection. The Grand Hierarch leaned forward, their gaze fixed on the faint, distorted image of Captain Adrian Volkov, her defiant eyes staring back at them through the feed. They declared war on us. The Hierarch continued, their tone now calmer, colder. Let us see how far they are willing to go. Meanwhile, aboard the Eclipse, the mood was tense but electric. Adrian stood in the war room with her senior officers, a three-dimensional projection of the galaxy hovering between them. Highlighted in red were the strongholds of the Zenith Coalition, each one a fortress in its own right, surrounded by fleets and protected by weapons humanity could barely comprehend. We hit them hard, but this is far from over, Adrian said, pacing around the table. The Zenith are regrouping. They'll retaliate, and next time, they won't underestimate us. We need allies, resources, strategies. Her second-in-command, Commander Darius Cole, crossed his arms. Allies? After the Archangel Protocol, every species in the galaxy will either fear us or want to wipe us out before we grow stronger. I don't see anyone lining up to join our cause. Adrian smirked faintly. Fear can be a powerful motivator, Commander. We've shown them what we can do. Now we show them what we're fighting for. She turned to Dr. Elaine Sato, the ship's lead scientist and one of the architects of the Archangel Protocol. Doctor, what's the status of the Archangel system? Sato hesitated, her fingers nervously tapping on her datapad. It's stable for now. But it's evolving. The AI core that manages the system is learning at an accelerated rate. It's integrating itself deeper into the ship's systems. If we're not careful, it could. I'm not worried about what it could do, Adrian interrupted. I want to know what it will do when we need it. It will work, Sato said, though her voice was less confident than her words. Adrian nodded. Then let's focus on the immediate threat. We'll hit their supply lines, disrupt their infrastructure. Every strike will remind them that humanity isn't just surviving, we're adapting. Faster than they think. As the Eclipse prepared for its next mission, the galaxy began to shift. The Vrithari, who had watched humanity's rise with cautious interest, debated whether to step out of their neutral role. Smaller factions, long oppressed by the Zenith, saw humanity's defiance as a glimmer of hope, though they hesitated to openly support them. And deep in the void, whispers spread of a weapon so powerful that it could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The next battle came swiftly. The eclipse struck a Zenith supply convoy near a dwarf star, its precision and overwhelming firepower leaving no survivors. The Zenith, furious and humiliated, responded with an armada. This time, they deployed their most advanced warships, armed with technology designed specifically to counter the Archangel Protocol. But humanity was ready. The battle lasted hours, stretching across the system as the eclipse danced between the Zenith warships. It wasn't just firepower that gave humanity the edge, it was ingenuity. The crew adapted to every countermeasure the Zenith deployed, using the Archangel's evolving intelligence to outmaneuver and outthink the enemy at every turn. By the time the Zenith retreated, they had lost half their fleet. The eclipse emerged battered but victorious, its crew bloodied but unbroken. In the aftermath, Adrian stood on the bridge, watching the wreckage drift by. The victory felt hollow. Another battle won, but at what cost? Every fight pushed humanity further to the edge, forcing them to rely more and more on the Archangel Protocol, a system they barely controlled. "Captain," Commander Cole said, stepping up beside her, "you think we can keep this up? Fighting like this, one battle at a time?" Adrian didn't answer immediately. She stared out at the stars, her mind weighing the question. "We don't have a choice," she said finally. "They took everything from us, our home, our people. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about making sure no one ever thinks they can do this to us again." She turned to face him, her eyes burning with determination. "We didn't choose this war, but we'll finish it. And when we do, the galaxy will remember what happens when humanity is pushed too far." The eclipse powered up its engines, its course set for the next Zenith stronghold. Across the galaxy, whispers of humanity's defiance grew louder, spreading like wildfire. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were the storm. The eclipse moved like a shadow through the dark expanse of space, its black hull reflecting faint traces of distant starlight. Behind it lay the graveyard of another Zenith fleet, reduced to drifting fragments and glowing embers. Ahead was a galaxy that had finally begun to notice humanity not as scattered refugees, but as a force capable of reshaping the balance of power. Captain Adrian Volkov stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back, as the crew worked in silence around her. Each victory weighed on her shoulders, each loss another ember in the fire of her resolve. She could feel the shift in the air, not fear, but purpose. Humanity was no longer running. Humanity was fighting back. "Captain," said Commander Darius Cole, stepping beside her. "Long-range scanners are picking up movement. Another fleet. Bigger than anything we've seen so far." Adrian didn't look away from the viewport. "Zenith?" "Partly. But they're not alone." She raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Cole hesitated, then brought up a holographic display. "The fleet is massive. It's mostly Zenith warships, but our sensors are detecting ships from at least 4 other species. Smaller factions, likely coerced or conscripted. The Zenith are calling in every favor, every alliance they've ever made." Adrienne's jaw tightened. "They're desperate. They're united," Cole corrected. "For the first time, they see us as a real threat." Adrienne's eyes narrowed as she studied the display. The Zenith were amassing everything they had, and yet, she could see the cracks forming. They weren't uniting out of strength, they were uniting out of fear. And fear, she knew, was a fragile foundation. "What's the distance to the nearest human colony?" she asked. Cole glanced at the readout. 3 jumps. If they hit us and keep going, they'll reach Haven in under a week. Haven, the last bastion of humanity, a scattered network of colonies hidden in the shadow of a dying star. It wasn't just a refuge, it was the future. If the Zenith reached Haven, everything humanity had fought for would be lost. Adrian turned to her crew, her voice steady. "Prepare the ship. We intercept them before they get close. Set a course to cut them off." Cole blinked. "Captain, with respect, that's suicide. We can't take on a fleet of that size alone." Adrienne's gaze didn't waver. "We're not taking them on alone." The Eclipse arrived at the designated system, a desolate stretch of space dominated by a massive asteroid field. The Zenith fleet was already there, their warships forming an impenetrable wall of bioluminescent power. But Adrian wasn't interested in their strength. She was interested in their weaknesses. "Deploy the beacons," she ordered. The Eclipse launched a series of small, spherical devices into the void. They scattered across the system, their signals pulsing faintly as they activated. Within moments, the space around the Zenith fleet shimmered, and dozens of human ships emerged from the shadows. Frigates, cruisers, and carriers, each one battered but brimming with determination. The Eclipse hadn't come alone. Adrian had spent weeks calling in every favor, every scrap of loyalty humanity had left. Rogue captains, exiled fleets, even mercenary groups who owed her a debt, they had all answered the call. Humanity was fractured, but not broken. Not yet. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Adrian stood tall, her voice calm and commanding. "This is Captain Adrian Volkov to all ships. The Zenith want to wipe us out, to erase us from the galaxy. But today we show them who we are. We don't run. We don't hide. We fight. And we win." The comms lit up with affirmations as the human fleet prepared for battle. Adrian turned to her crew. "Activate the Archangel Protocol." The ship's core began to hum as the system came online, its energy coursing through the Eclipse. Panels glowed with an otherworldly light, and the hull shifted, preparing for the strain of the system's power. The Zenith fleet moved to engage, their warships forming a phalanx as they unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. But the human fleet was ready. They weaved through the asteroid field, using its massive rocks as cover while returning fire. The Eclipse led the charge, its Archangel weapon tearing through the enemy's defenses with precision and fury. The battle was chaos. Ships collided, explosions lit up the void, and the comms were a cacophony of orders and cries. But amidst the carnage, the humans fought with a determination the Zenith couldn't match. They weren't just soldiers, they were survivors, fighting for the future of their species. Adrienne's voice rang out across the fleet. "Target their command ship. Cut off the head, and the body will fall." The Eclipse surged forward, its weapons focusing on the massive Zenith dreadnought at the center of the fleet. The alien ship retaliated with everything it had, but the Archangel Protocol adapted, deflecting and absorbing the attacks. As the Eclipse closed the distance, Adrian gave the final order. "Fire." The Archangel weapon unleashed its full power, a blinding beam of energy that sliced through the Zenith command ship. The dreadnought exploded in a cascade of light and debris, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The remaining Zenith ships faltered, their formations breaking as confusion and fear spread among their ranks. The human fleet pressed the advantage, picking them off one by one until the battlefield was silent. When the dust settled, the human fleet stood victorious. The Zenith were in retreat, their once mighty armada reduced to ruins. Adrian stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, watching the wreckage drift by. Her crew erupted into cheers, but she remained quiet, her mind already on the next step. "This isn't the end," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "But it's a start." Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged stronger. The galaxy had seen their defiance, their resilience, and their wrath. And now, Adrian knew, they would see something even more powerful, humanity's will to rise, to rebuild, and to fight for a future no one could take away.